guess you wondered why I never showed the voice.
Well, now you wasn't in there. You get drunk and fall out of the right time.
The word Reno, in the Rapanui language, is used to designate the volcanoes inside which water is stored, as is the case with Reno Raraku or Reno Aroi. The word Kau has several meanings such as abundance of water and large, broad. So the meaning of Reno Kau could be a large or wide volcano with a lot of water, an absolutely correct expression to describe this amazing phenomenon of nature. The accumulation of rainwater inside the large caldera of the volcanic crater formed a large lagoon about 1.5 kilometers in diameter whose shore is located about 200 meters from the upper edge. The surface of the lake, whose depth is estimated at about 10 meters, is covered to a large extent by numerous floating islands of topora reeds, which have a thickness of only 1 meter, which makes them very unstable. Several expeditions of scientists have gone down to the lagoon to extract samples of the sediments and study the different layers that have accumulated over time, which will allow us to better understand the environmental past of Rapa Nui. This lagoon was one of the available main sources of fresh water to the people of Easter Island until a few decades ago. On an island without permanent watercourses, human activity was developed mainly alongside the small inland lakes of Reno Kau, Reno Raraku and Reno Aroi, apart from other settlements near some springs and small ponds formed in volcanic rocks. The importance that water had in the past is observed in that all the deposits had own name, although many have been forgotten, like the legendary name of the crater, Te Poko Ui Te Haumaka o Hiva, the Black Abyss of Haumaka, of Hiva. 15 giants observe from their dominant position the astonished travelers who arrive at this unique place in the world. These megalithic images, which form a row on a central altar about 100 meters long, turn their backs to the sea to project their mana or spiritual protection to the ancient village that existed here. The variety in the shapes and sizes of the statues is striking. Here, contrary to what happens in other platforms such as Ahunau or Ahuakivi, they are all different. There are thin, thick, high and low, and even the expressions seem different. It is possible, as some theories point out, that they reflect in this way the character or features of each represented ancestor. Although aesthetic differences are more likely to be due to the different times in which they were manufactured. During the reconstruction, some old heads were found that show a more round and natural shape, but it seems that with the passage of time, the features became more and more stylized. All the Moai statues were carved in volcanic tuff from the quarries of the Reino Raraku volcano, located 1 kilometer northwest. Despite their relative closeness, it is still not explained how they were able to transport to Tongariki these huge giants that have an average weight of 40 tons. The Moai measure between 5.6 and 8.7 meters, being the highest and heaviest, 86 tons, the fifth on the right. If at the height of the Moai, we add the 4 meters of the back wall and the almost 2 meters of the pukao or headdresses that adorn the head, the complete monument reaches a maximum height of 14 meters. Formerly all the Moai of the Ahu carried a pukao on their head, but during the restoration only one could be placed on the second Moai on the right. The others, due to the passage of time and the tsunami, were too eroded. On the right side of the platform you can see 7 of these huge cylinders carved in red scoria extracted from the Punapau volcano. The statues sit on the highest part of the platform, which takes the form of an inclined plane when descending towards the front. Here, as a finishing touch, there appear a series of rows formed by large marine boulders, called poro, which are characteristic of this type of Ahu. Another of the wonders of Ahu Tongariki is the indescribable show that gives at dawn. Between December 21st, summer solstice, and March 21st, autumn equinox, the sun rises through the back of the Ahu, among its gigantic stone sculptures, offering spectacular and unforgettable images. After these dates, the sun rises behind the Poika volcano, but it is possible to also capture wonderful images of the sunset behind the Moai statues. Ahunau is the most elaborate and best preserved platform of the 3 that were built in Anakana. When the statues were knocked down during the clashes between the various clans of the island, they were left buried in the sand on the beach, which allowed them to be more protected from erosion than the others. The restoration work carried out between 1978 and 1980 by the team led by the Rapanui archaeologist Sergio Rapu, restored its ancient splendor and made it one of the most attractive archaeological sites on the island. Currently, a reconstruction that corresponds to the last historical phase of the Ahu, called Now 3, can be observed. It consists of a platform about 60 meters long by 12 wide. 7 statues stand on it. The first 4 from the left are practically intact and are crowned with a pukao, the headdress or chignon made of red volcanic scoria from the quarry of Punapao. These moai, along with one in Tongariki and the Ahu Ko Te Riku in Tahai, are the only ones on the island that carry a pukao. The 5th moai is also very well preserved, but lacks the pukao, the 6th is missing the head and the 7th barely shows half a torso. The surface of the statues, which are fairly uniform and stylized, is very polished, and the features of the face, nose, ears, and hands are finely carved and are somewhat more pointed than in other images. Even the pukao are very well worked, highlighting that of the first statue with an unusual conical shape. On the right side of the Ahu, there are remains of other pukao and a moai lying face up, quite eroded. The latter has the eye sockets uncut, so it is possible that it was never erected on the platform. Further to the right, next to the remains of the foundations of a boathouse or hairpino, there is another head of rounded shape on the ground, belonging to an older statue. From the remains found, it is believed that some 12 moai were part of the platform at some point, although there probably never were more than 8 on the Ahu at the same time. Without a doubt, the great focus of attention at Tahai are its 3 Ahu or ceremonial platforms located on the small rocky cliff that rises above the sea. The altars form a visual line that stars in this magnificent setting. If you look straight at the platforms, the first group on the left with 5 moai statues is the Ahu Vaiui, the next one is the Ahu Tahai, and the last one with a single statue wearing a pukao or hat is the Ahu Ko Te Riku. Ahu Ko Te Riku, a single moai of 5.1 meters high that was restored with all the elements that adorned the old finished statues. On his head it carries a pukao, a cylindrical piece carved in red scoria from the Punapao volcano. This form, which according to different opinions, represents a hat or a hair bun, was placed in the last phase of construction of the Ahu. The other differentiating element of Ahu Ko Te Riku is that it supports the only moai that has eyes of the whole island. It is thought that when a moai was installed in its Ahu, the eye sockets were carved and, after that in a ritual ceremony, his eyes, made of white coral and obsidian pupils, were inserted in. At that time the statue was considered to come alive and could project the mana or spiritual power to protect its tribe. Therefore, all the moai looked towards the interior of the island, as in Tahai, which is where the villages and their inhabitants were, and not towards the ocean. Until recently it was not known that statues had eyes. In the testimonies of the first Europeans who visited the island, no mention is made of this aspect of the Moai, so it seems that the eyes were eliminated and destroyed during the tribal wars that ended up demolishing all the statues. But in 1978, during the excavations of the Ahunau now in Anakana, an original eye of coral was unwittingly discovered and now exhibited in the Sebastian Engler Museum. The Ahu Vaiui, whose name could be translated as dark water or green water, is the platform with the largest number of erected statues. Its construction dates from 1200 AD, and its 5 restored moai are a sample of the different styles of how they were carved. The first one on the right is currently a piece of rock that is barely recognizable. However, the one that follows, much better preserved as such as the first on the left, has a lower and more robust body than the rest and shows a grim expression. On the pedestal located further to the left a statue is missed. It seems that the moai that should occupy it now lies a few meters further south near Malloy's tomb, knocked face down on the ground and next to a worn stone head. Ahutahai has a single solitary moai about 4.5 meters high. The figure, which is very eroded, shows a thick torso and a wide neck, and rises on the oldest platform of the complex built around 700 AD. Despite the enormous wear suffered by the moai over time, it still shows the greatness and pride of the ancestors they represent and, in some way, still transmits that mythical power called mana. The imposing masonry walls on which the platforms rise are interrupted between the Ahu Vaiui and the Ahutahai by a ramp paved with stones that leads to the sea. It is believed that it was used to lower fishing boats from the upper level to the shore.
121.1.